So if I were making, say, one of these drawstring bags, or just about any project I make, I use this method of centering. And these drawstring bags are generally not quilted, so I can actually hoop the fabric. So, but if it were quilted, if I were doing a quilting project, such as, like, say, this piece of fabric is quilted, and I probably wouldn't hoop it because you could really stretch out your hoop. If you're using like a multi-needle machine and the hoops are stronger, then yeah, you probably could hoop it. But with like the SE600 or 400, single needle machines, you probably don't want to hoop a quilted fabric. So in that case, I would float it. And I float a lot of things even if they're not quilted. But if I were to float, I'll just show you real quickly what I would do. I would take my fabric and I would find the center. Now, I'm not sure what I would be making with this yet, but let's say I was going to make like a zipper bag, and this was going to be my fold down here. And let's say I wanted to have the design, probably wouldn't use this ruler. I would probably use this one. I use the Get Squared rulers to center. So I have, this is an 8.5 inch. So it's a quarter inch, and 8 in the center. So 4 is still your center, your vertical center. And 4 is also your horizontal center because of the quarter inch down there. So I have 3 of these. I have the 8.5, and a 4.5 square ruler fits exactly in the center. You could see it doesn't move. So that's how I make my crosshairs. So, and I'll show you that in a minute. I also have the 6.5 inch, and that has a 3.5 inch. You have to buy them, of course, to fit in the center. And then for my big projects, I have the 12.5 inch, and that's a 6.5 inch square, fits in the center. So I just use the other Get Squared ruler to make my crosshairs. So, but if I were going to float this project, say it was a, like I said, like a zipper pouch or what have you, and I would probably want the bottom of my design on this particular bag to be, I don't know, maybe an inch from the bottom. Now this here is 3/4 of an inch from this line to up here. So, the inch is up there, which is fine. I could just move this up 1/4 of an inch, but you don't see the lines as well. So, but the first thing I would do is kind of center my bag on my table. So you don't have to use math really, you just have to center the bottom or line up the bottom with the line and make sure your sides come in just as much on both sides. Now, mine isn't cut right. I've got a stitching line here from when I long armed it. So which line I want to use, I don't know. I'll probably use the cut line because it's pretty close. And I'll just have a seam allowance come over that anyway. So I make sure that if this is like a 1/16 of an inch from this line, then this edge here, this edge here should be a 1/16 of an inch from this line, and then the bottom is lined up. So let me move that. That's about center. And then I would take my ruler, my Get Squared ruler, depending on which one I want to use. For this size, I'd probably use this one. Because my design will fit inside and so on. So, and if I wanted it to be, you know, an inch up, I would center this ruler here on my table, and I would say, okay, if I'm at the 1/4 inch line here, I want this edge to be at the 1/4 inch line there, and I'm lining up this on the bottom line, or the fold, this black line on the fold of the fabric. So I'm pretty much centered, I would say. And so, but if I want to start the design 1 inch up, that would be this line, not this, because this is 3/4. So I would take my template and I'd say, okay, the bottom of my design is like about there. So I kind of want to know where I'm going to put this. So if I wanted the bottom of my design at the 1 inch mark, I could move it up a hair. And I could actually have this whole template up a hair, because my basting line is this inner square. This is my 5mm stitch length basting line, and I usually have it 2mm off the design. So I could go by that, or I could just go by the hoop, since I use this whole, pretty much use the whole hoop. But I'm just trying to get an idea of where my horizontal center is going to be. So if I place my design there, I can see this is my crosshair. You can't totally see it because I printed this in 3D, but you know, that's the crosshair that I've digitized to be my first object of my design. And I use that crosshair. You can see where it ends, kind of like right there. It's a 3-inch crosshair, and it's in the center of the hoop, so this is also the crosshair for the center of the design. So it's nice, you know, they're both the same. But I can see that my horizontal center would be like on the 4. This is a 4 here. A little bit less than the 4. So it's in between, you know, the 4 and, depending if you look on the left side or the right side, on this side it's 3 3/4, on this side it's 4 1/4. So I can pick either horizontal line to be my center, because it's not that much difference. So I'll just pick the 4 for simplicity. And so I don't need this anymore. I know where my horizontal center is going to be. My vertical center is always going to be 4, because, you know, I put it on here centered. So everything is still lined up down here. Now you have to make sure you're really careful, and you take your square that fits in the center, and you just lock it in there. You don't, you know, once you put it on, even though it's overlapping like that, it stays tight. So I just put it on the 4, and it automatically goes to the 4 down there. And then I like to use an air erasable pen. I just don't like the water soluble because sometimes they mess up the stabilizer. They make it shrivel. I'll use the friction pen sometimes, but that can also ruin your stabilizer. When you iron, it could make things shrivel. But you can pre-iron your stabilizer, especially those poly mesh ones, to try to shrink it beforehand. So, but this is an air erasable pen, and I just, draw my vertical, hold this, and you don't have to tilt it or anything. You just bring it down. So you draw this one, and now you draw this one. Looks like I moved it. And let me make sure because I just moved it. Okay. So, and I just bring it down, and I said 4 was going to be my horizontal center. So, and so that's that. So then, once that's done, since I'm floating this, I can use the template that comes with the hoop. If I weren't floating it, I wouldn't be able to use this template. Now, I can see that because my design is, short here, it's not going to do well going that way. So I'm going to hoop it this way, and I'll just have to rotate my design. But at any rate, so when I go to put this on the fabric, since I'm floating it, all I have to do is hoop my stabilizer . Okay, and I have mine preset. This is for hooping fabric, so this might be a little loose, but I leave this in here because I don't like the spring. I think it causes puckering. But so this little piece of wood is for when I hoop fabric, but it's okay for this. But at any rate, so you just have your stabilizer hooped, and then since I'm going to float this, I open it up, and like I said, I'm going to turn it this way. So I have to remember to rotate my design. So I take the template that came with the hoop, and I line up this crosshair with this crosshair, and I actually tape it. Because I'm floating, I can. And you can get it pretty straight. And if it's not straight, then I'll show you at the machine how to make it straight. And then when I bring it over to the hoop, since it's taped, I should probably tape this on the other side. I don't tape that because that's how I have to remove it. I mean, you don't have to do it that way. And so now, since it's taped, this just fits into the hoop, right where it's supposed to be. So I just kind of bring it over. I don't have any spray or anything like that on, and I just kind of see where it's going to go. There. Now I can kind of feel, where it's going to be centered. So once I kind of have that in place, as long as it's going in on all 4 sides, I know I'm pretty much centered. So at that point, yes, you can go ahead and remove it. I could have sprayed it, but I'm not. I'm just going to remove it, and I'm going to pin it. And I'll just put one in the center, move it off the table for a minute, just to get started. And then I am going to have to move some of this. So I am going to move it off the table. I'll get the bottom. I'll run my finger, get the bottom. I'll go as close to the hoop as I can. Turn it around. Okay. And then as soon as you get to the machine, you're going to use your crosshair in your design to make sure that it's not crooked here. And then you'll stitch your basting box and you don't have to worry about the pins done. So anyway, so that's floating. So now if you did want to hoop your fabric, and say you were making this bag, and this bag is, you know, it's not quilted or anything, I have a slightly different method. So here's my cut fabric for this little pouch, and it's folded. Down here is the fold. It's 8.5 inches wide, and I usually like my designs to start 2 inches from the fold. So I usually use the large Get Squared ruler. It just makes it easier because I could see the edges of my fabric here and here. So I'll just go ahead and try and line it up. And now 2 inches down here from the fold, here's 1 inch, here's 3/4. So I'd need another 1/4. So that's this green line would be 2 inches. So I'd line up the fold with that green line, and then move this over, and then I'd shift it left or right so that I'm on the same vertical line here. So you could see I have a huge side distance there, and then this one is tiny. So I'll shift it to the left, and if I put it, say, here on 1.5, 1.5. On this side, it's on 2, so I'm a 1/4 inch off. So I have to shift 1/4 inch. So now I'm on the green one here, which is 1 3/4, and that means I should be on the green one on this side, because that's up here 1 3/4. That's the green line. So you don't even have to look at the numbers. You can just look at the lines, because there's black, red, and green. The red is dotted, the green is solid, and the black is really solid. Not all of them. Some of them you could see the ones in between. Every 1/4 inch, they're a little bit lighter black. But at any rate, so I'll use these 2 green lines on the side, and I'll line up the green line on the bottom. Make sure up here the green lines are on. So I'm pretty square. So now I know I'm square. I know I lined it up here. I'm 2 inches to this ledge here. So I take my template and I can just put it right on the ledge. I'm, 2 inches, give or take a 1/16. I'm fine with that. I just want to see where my horizontal center is, on this ruler. So on my template, here's my horizontal center, which also you could see is my crosshair. You can kind of see it end there. My crosshair is also in the center. So that's the crosshair that I digitized in to be my very first object of my design. And you'll see how we work with that when we get to the machine. But at any rate, to get my horizontal center, since this is so large, I can just slide this over to see which line here this corresponds to. And it's pretty close to this green one, which on this side says 7 1/4. So I just know it's the green one right here. I take my template off. I grab, now in this case, this is 6 1/2 inches in the center because it's a 12 1/2 inch get squared ruler. So I'll just use this 6 1/2 inch get squared ruler. So it fits right in. So I'm going to hold my ruler, lock this in, go to that green line, which like I said was 7 1/4 on this side. On this side though, 0 starts down here. So it's not 7 1/4 on this side. It's 4 3/4. So just so you know, I think the small one starts in the same spot. So at any rate, there's my horizontal. It locks right in, so you don't have to worry about it shifting. And I'll just draw my cross here. And I'll just take it and draw my vertical. And the vertical is always the same. So the vertical on this ruler is always going to be 6. It's just your up, down, your horizontal line that can change depending on where you want it. So I'm at 6, and I'll just draw this cross here. I probably didn't have to go up that far, but that's okay. You have a lot of room with the bigger ruler to make a bigger cross here. So your crosshair is drawn, and you're done with this. Now, if you did want to use this ruler, this is an 8 1/2 inch ruler, and I have 8 1/2 inch fabric. You could just line it up with the edges, and this is 1 inch, 1/4, and 3/4. My 2 inch line is here if I line this up with the bottom. So I'd have to come down here, and line that on the fold. I don't have to. I could move it and then just shift my line up, but so sometimes it's a little harder to line up rulers like that. Sometimes you want to line them up on a line. So, in this case, I'm going to line it up here, my 2 inches, line up the bottom of this with this ledge. And you can see my line, my horizontal line is in the same spot. But, of course on this ruler it's a different number. It's still this green line, but it's 4 1/4 on that side because it's a smaller ruler. If I wanted to line it up so I could see the fold better, I could move it down on the green line, still lining up my sides. If I have my sides, I have sandpaper on the bottom of this ruler, so it does make things a little more difficult to move, to slide this around, especially when I'm off to the side. So you know, I'm kind of using this line. So now 2 inches is 3/4, 3/4, that's 1.5. I have to go another 1/2 inch, which is this green line. So that would be my bottom, 2 inches. So I'd line that up with that, and, you know, I'd see where my horizontal crosshair, and it's in the same spot on the fabric, of course, but on the ruler, since we shifted the ruler, it's showing 4 1/4. So it all depends on how you want to do it. Just be careful. Make sure you count, you know, your 2 inches up, or, you know, if you're coming from the top, however, just make sure that you're on the right 2 inch mark. And so the crosshair is done. So you have your crosshair drawn, and you open up your fabric. Here's my fold. And you place your stabilizer down. And you want to make sure that the center of your crosshair is, you know, somewhat in the center of your stabilizer, so you have enough top and bottom, you know, enough stabilizer to cover the hoop. And so I use this template. This is a template I made for when I'm hooping, because I could tape it on the fabric, and then it doesn't slide underneath the inner ring because it has sides. So, and I'll probably be selling these on my website soon. That tape does not seem to hold real well, so I'm just going to use a different tape. I normally wouldn't use masking tape, but I've been using, I bought some very inexpensive painter's tape at the dollar store, and of course we all know those aren't that great. So I take my template and I match up this crosshair with this crosshair on the fabric. And then I hold it and I push the tape down, not all the way, just into these little holes. And then I take the inner ring and I use the method that there's a woman from UK on YouTube that uses shelf liner on her inner ring, and it's just held on by double-sided tape, you know, on the bottom of the inner ring. So there's no tape here. It's just double-sided tape holding the bottom ring to the shelf liner. And if you're on YouTube and you YouTube hooping with shelf liner, her video will come up, and so you can see how to do this. I like that there's no double-sided tape down here, because it allows you to, you know, keep the fabric taut, and it allows some movement of the fabric. So I go ahead and this is taped down, and I place this just around it. I kind of line up the bottom edge with this bottom edge. And kind of slide it in place. Let me hold it so I make sure it is in place. And then I got my thumbs on both sides, and I have my hoop already set with these little red clips. This is a certain size. This is 3/8 of an inch wide, and it seems to be working for when I have shelf liner on. If I'm not using shelf liner, I'd probably go to something really thin and put it in there. Or I can use, this makes it even tighter. These are just these clothespins that you can get. I think I got them at Walmart. but this size seems to be working with the shelf liner in 1 layer of cotton and 2-ounce cutaway. 1 layer of 2-ounce cutaway. So, at any rate, because I don't like to leave this flopping around, I feel like it causes a pucker here when you try to hoop. So I just know that this is where I want it set, and I never have to touch it. I just leave this on even when I'm sewing. So, because this is tight up against it. So there's my outer ring. So I grab the inner ring with my thumbs and the stabilizer and everything. I bring it over. I just try and find my bearings by pushing to the left and then kind of pushing up to see where I'm at. And I know where I'm at now. I'm in the vicinity. So you can walk around to hoop this, meaning walk around the 4 corners. Sometimes that works better. You just have to experiment. Sometimes just pressing down all at once together works even better. It's totally up to you. I can put my fingers like this, and just while I'm hovering above, I can gently go around and not pull too tight, but I know my crosswise grain is here, so it's really gonna, I'm gonna have a lot of stretchiness there. And for some reason I shifted already. So let's see. My hoop shifted. Okay, so this tape is not holding. And it could be because I starched the fabric, so I'm going to try to be more careful. It may not be sticking, so I'll just be more careful now. So I'll get my bearings there. I'm pushing up and to the left just to get my bearings. And as I'm holding now, I am going to just, because I'm not pushed down, so it's okay for me to make sure there's no slack anywhere. And now I'll go ahead and I'm going to walk it around this time. Okay. So we'll see how that did. Now these hoops you can't recess some because these are for, the single needle 4x4 hoops. They don't let you recess. Now you can see that I went off a little when I hooped it, but that's okay because I can fix that at the machine. It's just very slightly that actually my fabric shifted to the right. So, but I'll show you in a minute how to fix that. So let's just see how we did. I'm going to hold my finger and dial these back so I don't pull any fabric up. And I'll lift this out. And it looks pretty strong. It looks flat. I don't see any bubbles or waves. A lot of times you have to hoop it twice. But this time it did fine, and it's pretty good here. I could rehoop it to try to get that out, but I'm pretty happy with it. For me, the biggest issue is if the actual fabric itself has a wave in it, that's when you get puckering. Yes, you want your stabilizer tight too, and I could pull on the stabilizer and not the fabric just a little bit, just to try to get that to come out, and I did. I don't ever pull on the fabric while it's after it's hooped. So that's pretty good. So now we'll go to the machine, and I'll show you how to fix it when you've hooped crooked. And this one obviously is crooked, but in the example coming up, I purposely hooped it really crooked. It's a different fabric than this. Okay. Quick video on how I center my designs on the Brother SE600 or 625. So I purposely hooped my design crooked, and so I don't know if you can tell, if I do it straight on like that, you can tell that I purposely hooped it crookedly. And so I always draw a crosshair where I want my design to be on my garment, and then I hoop it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my design from my USB. So monograms, it's this one here, and you hit set. And in this design, if I hit end edit, you will see, and if I hit embroidery, you will see that the very first object of my design is a crosshair. So I have Embird embroidery software, and I always put a crosshair as the first object of my designs, because then I follow that crosshair with this stitch forward backwards button just to see if my fabric is hooped properly. And so obviously we know my fabric is not hooped properly. So at any rate, before I even get to this screen, I first make sure that my design is at least centered on this crosshair. So I'll use my back button. Oops. And here I am at this screen. So let me just go all the way back, cancel it, and I'll open it again, and I'll show you exactly the process. So I open my design, monograms, open it, set, and right away there is my design. So it looks centered on the screen, but obviously it may not be hooped properly. So I take my hand wheel here, and I come over to the machine, and I dial it down towards me, and I see if it's centered. Now, my needle is a little to the left, so I dial it back the other way, and I know I have to move my needle to the right, like, I don't know, 1/2 mil, 1 mil, but they go 1/2 mil at a time. So I'll dial it up. I'll come back over here to the screen, and since I'm on this screen, I could go to this move, but guess what? That's what's confusing. This move does not move the carriage. It does not move this carriage so that your needle is centered. So you can't really tell what you're doing. You have to go into Edit End and then move it with these buttons here on this screen, the screen where you see the embroidery button. So I'm going to go ahead. I want my needle to be moved to the right, so I'll click this, and this will change up here. This will change. So, and you heard the carriage move. The carriage actually moved to the left, but it made the needle move to the right, and that can be confusing. So just think of these arrows moving the needle. So then I go ahead and I look and I dial down, and it looks like it's right on the center. So I was only a 1/2 mil off as far as my center goes, but this is where I think a lot of people get confused. Just because it's centered doesn't mean that you hooped it correctly. You may still have to rotate it, and that's where this crosshair comes in handy. I don't stitch the crosshair, but I follow it. So now that I know at least my design is centered, I come back to the screen and I click on embroidery because I want to follow that crosshair, that very first object. You can't really see it, but it's in there. So I click embroidery. There's my first object. So I want to follow it. So far I'm on 0 out of the 5 colors because I haven't done anything yet. So I click on this stitch backward forward button and I know how I digitize the crosshair. So my crosshair starts out in the center, the way I digitized it, and then it goes to the right. So I'm going to go to the plus in my crosshair 10 stitches. And you'll see that, you know, it followed my crosshair on my design, but when I come and dial the needle down to where it's at, so you can see here that my needle is down too low. It's below the crosshair. And, you know, this crosshair is drawn on my fabric the way I need for my design to stitch out. So, my needle has to be rotated to the left. So, counterclockwise. So I lift it up, and you can kind of see the little dot that it made down there. I lift it up, and I know it has to go to the left. I'm not sure exactly yet how many degrees, so I have to get out of this screen, this reverse forward screen, so I click OK. I have to get out of embroidery to go back to the rotate, so I click this back button here, and then I can click the rotate button. And I know I have to go rotate to the left or counterclockwise. Remember, my needle has to go counterclockwise. So I'm going to click this a couple times, the 1 degree to the left. And you can see the design is moving now. So I'll go maybe, I don't know, I'll go 3 degrees. So instead of it at 360 now, it's at 357. If you click one of these rotate buttons and your design does not rotate, say, 1 degree like you want it, and it just flips over like a whole 90 degrees, that just means your design was too big for it to go 1 degree. It could only rotate it 90. So I wouldn't have that problem here because this design is already small. So I went 3 degrees to the left. Now I have to check it. We'll hit OK. We'll hit embroidery again to go back and follow it. Still, you know, saying 0. So we're on this first object. And you can see it's rotated a little bit. So we'll click this reverse forward button. And we'll go 10 stitches again and see if we're right on my crosshair here. Okay, so let's go see where we're at. So I'll dial it down actually I'm right on the line. So I dial it back up and I hit the +10 just to check the rest of the crosshair. So then it went to the center and now it goes to the right. So let me check the right. Dial it down. Now that looks like it's a little high there. Like, if I want to really be OCD, if I dial that down in the fabric, you can see it's a little high. So let's go back. Oh, I'm doing like 1 and 10. I'm trying to get to the farthest of my crosshair that's in my software. So let me see this now. If I dial that down, it is below. So the needle needs to come one more click to the left. I don't know if you could see that, but the needle is below the line here, but it was above the line over here. So that just means I had to go 1 more degree to the left with the needle. So I'll dial it back up and I'll come here to my screen. I'll click OK. I have to get out of this embroidery screen. I'll go back, rotate, and I'm going to go 1 more degree. So now I'm at 356 degrees. So I rotated it 4 degrees to the left total. And you could still see my position is still up here when I moved it at the very beginning to get it on center. So everything is good. I say OK. And I click embroidery and we'll try it 1 more time. I think this is good. So here's our crosshair. Here's our button to fast forward or slow forward. We'll go +10. Okay, and I'm going to go a couple more just to get it. Maybe you can see both the screen and just to get it. Whoops, cancel. I accidentally touched the wrong button. Just to get it to go to the very end of my crosshair. I made my crosshair really short. Let's see. I'm not right-handed. Okay, so now it's going backwards. Okay. Okay. We'll just leave it there. And I'll go ahead and dial it down. And it looks like it's right on. Well, it's still a little below, to be honest. I think I could have went even 1 more degree to the left. So, sorry, this is taking a while. So I'll click OK. And I'll go back out of this embroidery screen. I'll click rotate. And I'm going to go 1 more degree. So now it's actually 5 degrees total. And we'll click embroidery, click here, and we'll go 10 plus, and I'm going to go up. So that was as far as I could go to get to the end of my crosshair. Now let's see. Okay, it's right on. So 5 degrees was how much I needed to rotate it. Let's just check the rest of the crosshair. So we'll go +10. I have to go +1. Oh, okay. So I'm at the very end of this crosshair, or this side of the crosshair. And it's right on the line. So generally, if your horizontal there is straight, the vertical is going to be straight as well. But let's just check. It's just always nice to have a crosshair instead of just one line. So we'll go plus 10, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. That's probably, oh, it's going. Okay, that was the end of it, so I went back. Okay, so now we will dial that down. And it's right on. It might be a little to the right. I mean, we could go one more degree. Let's see how the bottom looks. And honestly, this is being so perfectly perfect. So, I mean, most people aren't this perfect, but sorry, I should have had that down. So, let's just go another 10. I'm going plus 1 again since I made this cross here. Oh. Okay, so that's the end of the crosshair there. And that one is actually coming up to the left. So that would mean that the needle could go one more degree to the left. So, because if you recall, this one is to the left of the crosshair, and let's see, go minus 1. Get it in focus. Oh. So the bottom one was to the left of the crosshair, and the top one is slightly to the right. I mean, my line could be off, but we could rotate one more degree to the left. I'll go ahead and try and go one more degree and just see what happens. So I have to get out of this screen, so I go backwards and then rotate, and then 1 degree to the left again. Click OK, click embroidery, go fast forward, and let's go 10 and see what we did. Okay. I mean, it's still kind of on there. Dial back up and go 10 more. You kind of know what I'm doing with the screen, so I'll just focus on this. I'll go 10. I'll go plus, whoops, minus 10. I'm going plus 1. Oh, that's as far as I can go. So it is on. It is still on the horizontal. So that's 6 degrees total. So let's go and fast, whoops. Okay. Okay, so I am right on that line. So I can go fast forward another 10. I'm going to go by ones now. Oh, it's going backwards, so I'll go. So that should be dialed down. And I am actually right on that. I am actually right on that. So it was 6 degrees off. So that's how I hooped it wrong. So now I'm good. My design is, you could see how much I had to rotate it quite a bit because I hooped it crookedly. So I'll click OK. I'm ready to embroider, but I'm not going to embroider the crosshair. So I want to still use my fast forward or slow forward button here. But instead of going forward with the stitches, I want to go forward to the next thread color. You could see I'm on thread color 1. So I just click the plus. Now I'm on thread color 2, which is my basting rectangle right here. And I go ahead and I just start sewing. I pull down my presser foot and I press start and I'm ready to go. Now, you know, everybody says you should go back still and do a you know, a trace of your design. Now, one thing, boy, I wish that Brother had a crosshair built in so I didn't always have to put it on at the beginning, but they don't. And I wish that this screen were actually a crosshair screen for your design, but it's not. It's actually, all it does is it shows you the, like this button here, shows you the lowest most position of your design. And it also shows you the farthest left. That's why there's a line going that way and that way. And then this button just shows you the lowest position of your design. Even though at this point my design is up a little farther, it still shows you the lowest position of the design going across your fabric. And same thing here. And then this one here, it only shows you the far right. That's why the lines are going up and down. It shows you the far right of your design. It's not following my crosshair or anything. It's just showing you the far right position, as this one is showing you the far left position, going up and down vertically. So, and this, yes, it does show you the center of your design. And if we dial down, we're still, let me pull this up, you know, we're in the center. But these buttons here only show you, like that shows you the farthest position that your design will take. So this screen here is not helpful for centering, but it is helpful to know, okay, the farthest position of your design. Maybe you have something down here that you don't want it to hit, or you have another design and so on. So just so you know, you can't get centering and so on with this screen. Now, if you wanted to have, say, lettering or a monogram stitch along, like, say, the top of a pocket or the top of a towel, you actually have to digitize a line in your embroidery software right along the bottom of your design, just as the way that I put in a crosshair. And then you would follow the bottom of that line just the way I followed my crosshair, but then don't stitch it, just like I'm doing here. So I just didn't want anybody to get confused about this screen, because it is confusing. Like this right side, you can see it's only showing you the farthest bottom of this design. It's not showing you the actual bottom of the corner of this design. So don't use this for for centering and rotating and so on. Just use it to show you the farthest bottom, the farthest right, or the farthest left. Sorry to be so repetitive, but so I'll just click center again and click OK. And then, like I said, when you go to embroider, it went back to 0 because we did something. So go here, click on the thread spool plus. Now click OK, and we're ready to stitch our basting box and then the rest of our design. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, you can always contact me at wequiltstudio.com or look me up on Facebook, Lisa Wequilt, and I'll be happy to help you with any questions. And feel free to join my Patreon group and become a patron, and we will just have a lot of fun being an embroidery and sewing community and do lots of fun things together. So that's always been my dream, is to share our love for embroidery and quilting and sewing with the world. Thanks a lot.